Within the EDC community, we carry a lot of things, some of them pretty useless. But one thing I don't hear talked about often enough, and arguably one of the most important things that you can carry with you, something that can literally save lives, is an Ifak kit. And it's just something that's not talked about enough. So if you aren't carrying an Ifak kit already, I suggest you check out the rest of this video. First of all, you don't need to spend a ton of money on a pre-built one. In fact, I almost wouldn't recommend you do that at all. You can definitely put together something yourself that has everything you need, but I do want to point out before we get into any of the equipment in here, what it is, how to use it. I'm not going to get into detail on how to use it, but before we get into any of that, I do want to make this disclaimer or note or whatever. Amazon, a lot of these places that aren't super reputable might have knockoffs of these products. You absolutely do not want to risk getting a knockoff. I mean, if you're going to pay money for a life-saving tool, pay the amount to get the real stuff, buy it from a reputable dealer. You might save $5 getting a knockoff and somebody might lose their life because of it, because it fails. Don't go buy from Amazon. Don't go try and save a buck here and there. Get the real deal. It's worth it. So before we get into anything else, I want to explain what an Ifak kit actually is. Ifak stands for Individual First Aid Kit, and they're very geared towards military, because if you're deployed overseas, you're carrying one of these. Tactical teams, SWAT teams, stuff like that, they all carry them. And in that situation, everybody carries their own med kit, right? So they pack it for them, and everybody else on the team is trained and knows how to use all of the equipment. And so if I was to get injured, one of my buddies would then use my Ifak kit on me. In the civilian world, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to have somebody else come up to you who's trained on how to use the stuff in here and then who is going to access your Ifak kit. So this right here, in the way that I think of it and use it, is that I have the stuff to potentially save somebody else's life. Okay, if I come across a car accident, which is by far the most common type of injury you're going to run into in a civilian environment, I should say life-threatening injury, the stuff in here is not a boo-boo kit, right? All of the stuff in here is for trauma, for treating wounds that are life-threatening. So we have our kit to save somebody else from life-threatening wounds. That's the very short synopsis of what an Ifak kit in civilian use case is. So now that you know what an Ifak kit is, do you go out and buy a kit like this that comes in this fancy tactical looking bag and has everything in it, or do you put together something like this, which really doesn't look that great? But let me explain the pros and cons of both of these. If you buy a pre-made kit from a good, reputable source, you can definitely get something good, but you are going to be paying for the bag that you don't really need. I have had a piece of thread get caught in the zippers because these bags, while they might look cool, they aren't perfect. So I've had a thread get caught in the zipper, and in a high stress situation where you might have blood on your hands and you're working with a broken zipper, you might not be able to access something in here. With a Ziploc bag, you're able to easily see everything that's in there. Anybody can just look into this bag, see what's in there. If you've got blood on your hands, you're still able to rip the bag open, even if you're struggling to get it unzipped up top. And you can really just tear into it and get what you need, and it's super cheap. Okay? So I have this exact Ziploc bag set up in my office, in my house, in my truck, in my motorcycle, in our van. I have these things all over the place. I don't carry a tourniquet or anything like that on my person. It's just too bulky. I try and keep what's on my person fairly minimal. However, I do have them easily accessible and pretty close to me just about anywhere I am. Another disadvantage I forgot to mention, probably the biggest disadvantage to buying a pre-made kit is that there are a lot of people who aren't reputable, or they might put together like their own kit with their own tourniquet or something like that, one that's not approved and one that might fail. Whereas if you put together your own kit, you can buy all top of the line products that you know aren't going to fail. They're certified, they're used, around the world by militaries, they're used by police, they're used by first responders, and you know that they're going to get the job done. Let's dig in. If you're going to carry one piece of life-saving equipment, this is probably the most important one. And believe it or not, it's also the cheapest. This right here is North American Rescue Compressed Gauze. NAR stands for North American Rescue. They are they're an extremely good company. They're very reliable. So there's two flavors of this particular compressed gauze. This is the flat rolled, because when I stocked up last time, I stocked up on stuff. They didn't have any of the S rolled. The S rolled is a little bit easier to deploy when you're packing into a wound, but they didn't have any of that. It was out of stock everywhere for a while. Right now, I think it is back in stock, so I'll probably pick some more up. But this is the flat rolled gauze. Really, the only difference is how it comes out. Like this stuff here is folded in sheets, whereas the S rolled just kind of comes out a little bit easier. So they're like $4 to $6 a piece. Definitely the most versatile. You've got any kind of wound that you're able to pack, this is what you're going to want to use. Even if you have like an arterial bleed on a leg or an arm and you don't have a tourniquet, you can start packing this in. The second thing that I keep in my essentials bag, right, is a tourniquet. Now this is a cat tourniquet. This is the 7, I believe. I can never keep track. Anyway, whatever the latest cat tourniquet is, 6 or 7. These things are absolutely fantastic. I do want to cover a couple of things about tourniquets. There are all of these wild rumors out there about tourniquets causing people to lose limbs, causing all kinds of problems, and you don't want to use a tourniquet. I can tell you that I have personally worn a tourniquet over a dozen times, sometimes for up to an hour, and I'm just fine. I've never lost a limb. Yes, I cranked it on as tight as it needs to go. It is extremely painful. However, it's not as painful as like if you have an arterial bleed in your arm or leg, that injury is going to be a heck of a lot more painful than putting a tourniquet on. You can safely put a tourniquet on somebody, so even if the blood isn't squirting out like an arterial bleed, and you're not sure, maybe you used your gauze for something else, or whatever the case may be, if you're not sure and you want to err on the side of caution and put a tourniquet on, you absolutely can, and the person is going to be fine. They're not going to lose a limb because you used a tourniquet. Okay, so tourniquets are safe to use. There are only a few recommended tourniquets. Those recommended tourniquets are the cat tourniquets, the soft T. I don't know the list exactly off the top of my head. I do want to bring up one other type of tourniquet. So this is the SWAT T tourniquet. It's essentially a rubber thing, and it tells you exactly how tight to make it. There's a little shape on there, and when you stretch it, it stretches it and kind of shows you how tight you want to make it. Now, these things are almost impossible to put on yourself. I've never been able to put one of these on myself. I've put these on myself many times, so they're not really self-deployable. However, if you have kids, if you're around kids, if there's any chance that you may come in contact with kids that, God forbid, have a arterial bleed on a limb, this particular SWAT T is going to be essential for kids because their limbs are just too small. So you try and put one of these onto a child, and it's not going to be a good day. It's just not going to be able to get tight enough. So, like I said, God forbid that you ever have to put a tourniquet on a child, but having a SWAT T on hand will allow you to be able to apply something to a child. All right, so that is all I have to really say about tourniquets. I mean, they're really to stop arterial bleeds on extremities, right? Just cuts off the circulation. After that, in the civilian world, I'm going to recommend a uh, essentially an Israeli bandage, right? This one here is again by NAR, emergency trauma dressing. This is the 4 inch. There's also a 6 inch. What this is going to be used for is holding on, like if you were to put compressed gauze. I mean, put this on and hold it, right? But if for some reason you're not able to keep putting pressure on there, you've got a whole bunch, you've got a mass casualty event, and you're just packing gauze into as many people as possible, and you've got to move on to the next person to pack more gauze, and you have to leave that person, and they're not able to put that pressure on themselves, then putting an Israeli bandage or emergency trauma dressing on them will kind of help to hold that pressure. The other times that this is going to be super useful is, for example, like a head injury. You cannot pack compressed gauze into a head injury, and so this can be used to apply pressure there. This is something that you can probably leave out of most civilian kits. It's in every military kit, every tactical, like police kit and stuff like that, and that's a chest seal. I have one in all my kits because they're like $2 or $3, and maybe something weird happens and I need one. So this is going to stop sucking chest wounds, or this is for sucking chest wounds. The most common time that you're going to have a sucking chest wound is if you get shot through the chest, which in civilian life hopefully never happens. It's definitely not common. In a car accident, something like that, the likelihood of something puncturing a lung and creating a sucking chest wound is just not super high, but weirder things have happened, so I do have one of those. So those are the basic items that I have in this bag here. You can get all of them from a good dealer for under $100. I even want to say maybe like 80, somewhere in there. The most expensive thing is going to be your tourniquet at 35-ish dollars. These, on the other hand, not super cheap. You're usually paying $130, and you might not even get a, for example, cat tourniquet. You might get some knockoff tourniquet. So I highly recommend going that route. This does have a few things in here that are useful that I want to talk about. Trauma shears. I don't have any trauma shears in my bags. Maybe I will put them in there. They're pretty inexpensive for those of you in the EDC community. I mean, we all carry knives, but if you think you're going to be able to cut clothing off of somebody while they're all bloody and your hands are all bloody with a pocket knife and not accidentally injure that person worse than they are already, you're wrong. These have rounded tips. You can slide this along somebody's skin, and it just gets in there and you can cut clothing off. So, for example, if you did have a sucking chest wound and you just had to get their shirt off, a trauma shears is a great thing to have. Just because you're not going to injure that person and you can still operate the scissors while you're all slippery and bloody. I don't know about you. One thing a lot of these kits have is just some gloves. I've never rushed to put gloves on when there's a life and death situation. Um, so take that for what it's worth. Maybe you want to carry some gloves. Maybe you'll use them. Maybe you won't. So yeah, this kit doesn't have a whole lot of things that my plastic bag kit doesn't have. Those are the basics that you're going to have in an Ifak kit. You might have like a nasal pharyngeal or something like that in there as well. But regardless, like you can specialize and get all kinds of gear. This is kind of the basics to keep it small, to keep it somewhat inexpensive, and have it as many places as possible. But all of this gear is going to be completely useless to you and to anybody that you encounter if you don't train and know how to use it. So there's a fantastic program here in the United States called Stop the Bleed. They're free classes. They're all over the U.S. They're in typically within a half hour to an hour of pretty much every location. in the United States, possibly a little bit further drive if you're out west or something like that. But they're all over the place. They're free. Great training. You actually get to use these tools. I mean, if you don't use these tools, you're not going to be able to perform under pressure when you actually need to use them. The other thing is these things are all sealed in sterile containers, so you don't necessarily want to be taking them out of their sterile packaging. So having separate stuff to train with and separate stuff that you actually carry with you. I mean, same brand, everything like that, but just not the exact same items. And being able to go to a Stop the Bleed class or something like that and get that training really allows you to access that stuff and train with that stuff for free, which is incredible. So take those classes, get some training, get some basic gear, carry it with you, and you never know when you are going to be the first responder. So this is the big thing that I think everybody in the EDC community should be carrying with them. I mean, if you're carrying stuff with you every day, you might as well carry something that can and will save somebody's life. And with the amount of car accidents that we have, not only in this country, but just around the world, the likelihood that you will be a first responder in your life is unfortunately bigger than we might hope. So anyway, a bit of a downer video, but I think it's super important. It's a topic that I spend a lot of time on. So anyway, that's all I have for today, and I will see you guys in the next one.